vote to have a meeting on March 3rd.
You better believe it.
Okay.
Well, can I ask a question? Is
Yes.
this just to talk about a offer or all offers?
All offers.
Okay.
I would prefer all
All
offers.
offers, right. Yeah.
That was my,
Yeah.
if anybody
Yeah.
that still wants
Sure.
it, we need to talk about them all,
Yes.
not just a single offer. Thank you, Ms.
Right.
Jake.
That's right.
Okay, roll call.
Chick? Yes. Manley, yes. Otto?
Yes.
Chockley?
Yes.
Zelenak?
Yes.
Docket?
I don't believe we should sell any township property, no.
Okay. That passed 5-1. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the balance of the agenda as distributed.
Support?
Motion by Chockley, support by Manley. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, that passes 6-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing to consider the removal of Sam Iaquinto from the Northfield Township Planning Commission due to alleged malfeasance. And we have an opportunity for anyone who would like to come and speak at this time, but I would like to, since I don't know if all of you are familiar with the actual notice of charges, I'd like to read that. Pursuant to MCL 125.38159, the Township Board may remove a member of the Planning Commission for misfeasance, malfeasance, or nonfeasance in office upon written charges and after a public hearing. The reason for recommending removal from office is malfeasance. It is alleged that Mr. Iaquinto failed to disclose a potential conflict of interest to the Planning Commission. Specifically, it is alleged that after entering into an agreement regarding real estate that he owned, he voted on matters affecting that real estate to ensure that marijuana establishments would be permitted there. So state law is pursuant to MCL 125.38159. Before casting a vote on a matter on which a member may reasonably be considered to have a conflict of interest, the member shall disclose potential conflict of interest to the Planning Commission. The member is disqualified from voting on the matter if so provided by the bylaws or by a majority vote of the remaining members of the Planning Commission. Failure of a member to disclose a potential conflict of interest as required by this subsection constitutes malfeasance in office. So the Northfield Township Planning Commission bylaws actually state that a potential conflict of interest is defined as property the commissioner owns, leases, or rents, property owned by a commissioner's relative or employer, or a party with whom a commissioner shares pecuniary interests, such as partner, employer, lender, renter, or investor. So that was the notice that Mr. Iaquinto received. I actually called him on February 3rd after taking a look at the letter that he provided to the board on January 24th, stating that this had happened. It is, and I'm giving you some background information. And would you please be quiet, or I'll have to ask you to leave. Thank you. And I asked him if he would consider resigning, and he refused to resign. So I did notice him that in a discussion on the phone that I would be taking the next step. This is the next step. Again, this is in the public, not in secret, and so I'm bringing this forward for you all to, for the board to consider and for the public to have a hearing on this item. So, I have someone who would like to speak.
Madam Supervisor?
Yes.
Madam Supervisor?
It's working, Ken.
Okay, Madam Supervisor, I rise to a point of order, actually. Prior to you starting this public hearing, I believe that the accused has a right to know who is alleging this. You did not state that. You just stated it's been alleged. Prior to you starting this public hearing, I think that he deserves, as well as everyone here deserves, to know who is alleging malfeasance, because you didn't state that.
Okay.
So I would appreciate you doing that prior to having this public hearing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I took a look, well, is it appropriate that I answer that question, Mr. Fink?
Madam Chair, I think it would be
Yes.
appropriate, since you've opened the public hearing, to have the members of the public speak, and you
Okay.
could address it when and if the board deliberates.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Mary Devlin, 9211 Brookside Drive. I would like,
Oh, yeah, we have to vote to open the public hearing. You are correct. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing.
Madam Supervisor, you did not open a public hearing.
I'm
You did
going
not
to
have a
now.
vote to open a public
I'm
hearing.
going to now. Thank you. Sit down.
Excuse me.
Thank you, sir.
Step back,
Thank
lady.
you, sir.
You know, you're out of control.
I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Point of order.
Do I have a second?
I'll support.
I'm sorry, I'm not
Motion by
supposed to
Chalkley, support
speak.
by
Not yet, Mary.
Manley to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. I don't know why the gentleman is up at this point, because you're
Thank
there,
you.
Ms. Devlin.
We had requested an opportunity to address the board, and customarily that would be done before the public speaks. Are we going to have that opportunity?
Okay. Mr. Fink, is that true?
There's no specific requirement for how you conduct the hearing. Mr. Kelly can speak when
Okay.
you offer him the opportunity. You could give him the opportunity ahead of time, or I believe the lady is the next person up, and you could call on him next. It's
Okay.
up to the chair.
Well,
Okay.
I'm not here as a member of the public, so I will not be speaking during the public comment.
Why not? Okay.
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 Here I
did
go
say all
again.
in favor, say aye.
Wait, what's the motion?
The motion was to open the public hearing. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, apparently it is open. Roll call. Okay, roll call vote.
Chick.
Should I go and sit down and come back again, or what?
Yeah, it's not open yet.
Hang on, Ms. Devlin.
So yes or no?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I would like to hear Mr.
I can't hear you, I don't have my hearing.
I would like to hear Mr. Iaquinto validate that what he wants to say here at this meeting and represent himself or his attorney. I initially was going to ask that the motion for the public hearing be removed as well as agenda item number 1, but I think it's important that Mr. Iaquinto speaks, so I will say no.
No
No to
opening it?
opening the public hearing?
No to opening the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Then we won't hear him speak.
Did you vote yes?
No.
No?
Otto?
Okay.
Okay, I too feel that Sam needs to have his day in court here, because that's basically what this is. But I am not going to support the public hearing.
Okay.
The answer is no.
Okay.
Okay, I'm voting yes because I'm assuming that the only way that we can hear people speak is if we have a public hearing. Am I correct? Otherwise, when will his attorney be able to speak to us?
Okay. I'm going to vote yes.
My vote's yes. Chalkley?
For the same reason.
Zelenak?
No, I'm voting no, just because, as Mr. Warburton, I might have your name, is, I think as a board, we should have been told about this as opposed to just getting it notified, because I think that's important.
Docket?
Mr. Dockett?
Docket?
No.
Okay. So no public hearing? I guess we can move on.
Point of order.
Oops. Stop. No, sorry.
Madam Supervisor, we had
Yes.
requested an opportunity to address the board. I'm not here as a member of the public. I am here as the attorney for the person who's accused of committing a conflict of interest, which you have characterized as misconduct in office. I do believe he's got a right to present his case and answer those charges. I'm here to do that. I'm here to do that pursuant to written notice to you
Okay.
and to all of the members of the board. I would like an opportunity to do that. I'm not here as a member of the public. I'm not limited to 3 minutes. My client has due process rights. which need to be respected by this board, which is a subdivision of the state and bound by the Constitution. We're not here as a member of the public. We would like to proceed. My client has a significant interest in clearing his name from charges that basically amount to a felony in this state. So he will be heard tonight. We're not here as a member of the public.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to allow Mr. Iaquinto and his attorney to speak to the public to the charges.
I'll second that. Motion by Chick, support by Chalkley. Any discussion? Well, no, I guess we're going to do this part first. But the public is here for the public hearing, so they will have an opportunity at the end, apparently. Right. So I would like to get a comment from our attorney at this time.
Oh, wait a minute, we
are in the midst, you're right, we are in the midst of a vote. I mean,
we have to vote.
we are.
We are, so we can't get comments.
We have,
Okay.
we have to vote.
No,
No?
we've got a motion by Ms. Chick and support by Ms., by me.
Well, if it was...
That vote to hear Mr.
why
Iaquinto's attorney.
why wouldn't we vote?
Yeah, we're going to. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, roll call. We're voting on allowing Mr. Kelly and Mr. Iaquinto to address their charges. That's,
Otto,
Yes.
Dockett,
Yes.
Chalkley,
yes?
Chick,
Yes.
Manley, yes. Zelenak.
Okay. That passed. Okay,
And when are we doing this?
Now,
yeah. Now we're doing this.
number one
Yep,
comes under number one of our agenda item.
okay.
Good evening. I am Sam Iaquinto, and I'm here to address the Board of Trustees on the subject of removal of myself from the Planning Commission. The Supervisor, Marlene Shockley, is simply accusing me of not putting this community, Northfield Township, first. My actions since June of 1993 have simply shown the opposite, that I have always put this community first. My first summer of owning my businesses, Max Marina and Dee's Place, the summer of 1993, I was asked to sponsor a baby and teen pageant due to the fact that the sponsor backed out last minute. I accepted, and I was also asked to be a judge. That was the start of my community involvement, of putting this community first. I became a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and within a year I was elected VP, serving for many years as Vice President and President, through which I was one of the co-founders of the DDA with Barb Griffith and Mindy Vishal. Mindy Vishal, Barb Griffith, and I spent many hours working on parcel numbers and documentation for the submittal to the county. In 1995, I was appointed to the PC and served for 6 years until I stepped down. In 2004, I was one of the co-founders of the Kiwanis Club, the Morning Kiwanis Club. I was also co-founder of the current newspaper to give the community an identity and a news source which was non-existent. That was a labor of love, not one of profit, as another individual who was here with me could attest to that. I served our sports programs as Whitmore Lake Junior Commissioner for 9 years and ran and served as the High School Touchdown Club VP. I was reappointed to the Planning Commission in 2003 and have served for a total of 18 years. 18 years. I was also elected as a trustee from 2008 to 2012. Serving on the Planning Commission, I was part of 4 master plans. I have always taken my service to the Planning Commission as an honor and a serious responsibility. Section 8.9 speaks of voting. Before casting a vote on a matter on which a member may, it doesn't say shall, may, reasonably be considered to have a conflict of interest, the member shall disclose the potential conflict of interest to the Planning Commission. The member may abstain from voting on the matter and may absent himself. I understand this section and I respect it immensely. I have not had a conflict of interest with this matter, as I am being accused. The Planning Commission was asked by the board to prepare marijuana ordinances by the Board of Trustees, and we did for 4 months with the help and guidance from McKenna and Paul Lippens from January through April of 2019. Every aspect of the original ordinances we sent to the Board of Trustees in April 2019 was based on studies and discussion of what was appropriate for a township, for Northfield Township. We are a recommending body, not an approval body. The Board of Trustees is that. The supervisor, Marlene Shockley, has had a personal vendetta against me for the past 6 years because I did not support her to continue as chair of the PC and did not support her run for her office. She also has a vendetta against 2 others and did not reappoint them to the PC, even though they had the most experience at that given time. In January of 2019, the supervisor recommended another name instead of mine for reappointment to the PC, and the motion died for lack of support. February 26, 2019, 2 months later, she offered my name up, and that motion passed 7-0. The supervisor notified the Board of Trustees about this public hearing and the intent to remove me on February 13, 2020, and shared the documentation with them. I received notice through certified mail the 19th of February, 6 days later, allowing me 5 days to find representation, draft a response, and figure out a plan to these accusations. I wasn't even given her list of charges. I was just given a notice that I was being asked to, there was a public hearing where I was being asked to be removed. In the packet today, there are about 50 pages in respect to my removal, which I was not supplied any of that. And I ask you, what kind of due process is that for a person that has served this township for 27 years? And what kind of respect is that from the supervisor? I thought proper notification for a public hearing posting was 10 days. As a planning commissioner, we have always followed that. And it was also posted on the township sites. It was also posted out in front of this building for any public hearings that were to be held for Northfield Township. None of that has happened for this public hearing. I never received any other documentation but a notice of a one-page hearing that was sent certified mail to myself. And I had to read all of the information and all the charges from the packet myself. So again, scrambling because that packet came out last Thursday evening. I had very minimal time to go ahead and prepare something in response for myself. I have loved this township for 27 years, met my beautiful wife in this community, raised 2 sons, and am one of only 3 small businesses that have survived 3 decades in this community. We have given tens of thousands of dollars as donations to the community and have served the community respectfully for 27 years. I noticed the Board of Trustees at the appropriate time on January 24, 2020. Any discussions prior to that were not specific to my property. They were general ordinance discussions for Northfield Township. I asked the Board of Trustees to clear my name. I have and will continue to put Northfield Township first. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jim Kelly. I'm an attorney representing Mr. Iaquinto today. Mr. Iaquinto is charged by the Township Supervisor with taking a vote without disclosing an interest that would ensure medical marijuana would be permitted on his property. That is not the case. No one can say today whether medical marijuana will be permitted there because the township has imposed a licensing process, which is still in progress. We don't know if medical marijuana will be permitted on that property. What Mr. Iaquinto did, what every member of the Planning Commission did, was study an issue, a zoning ordinance that's generally applicable to this entire township. He did not rezone his own house. He did not rezone commercial property that's owned by him. The point of this conflict of interest provision is to prevent that scenario. You are a member of the Planning Commission. You own a commercial property that's owned by an LLC on paper. You're the sole member of the LLC, or it's a closely held corporation. No one knows that 123 Main Street LLC is owned by the commissioner. The commissioner needs to disclose that. That's the point of the conflict of interest provision. You have an easement on the neighboring property, and if that neighboring property is re-owned as commercial, your easement, which is the sole means of ingress and egress, or the sole land that could be used as a parking lot, is now much more valuable. That is what the conflict of interest provision is for. It's not for a generally applicable zoning ordinance. I fail to see how it would be different from a master plan. There was talk tonight of a master plan for the township. All of you own property in this township. You have to, because you wouldn't be on the Board of Trustees if you didn't. None of you disclose that. When the Planning Commission looks at the master plan, do all of them disclose that they own property in the township or they own a business that's affected by this master plan? No, of course not, because that would be ridiculous. Are all of them removed? No, also of course not, also ridiculous. To the board, this conduct simply is not a conflict. But to dig deeper, the chronology here is important. The Planning Commission began studying the issue in January of 2019. It took a vote on March 20th. This is before the alleged contract, well before the alleged contract. Mr. Iaquinto committed himself publicly to a vote and helped craft, with the rest of the Planning Commission, a set of ordinances that would be generally applicable to the township. Those ordinances came here to this board. They were returned with revisions to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission met May 1st, again, before the contract, which creates the alleged conflict of interest. Mr. Iaquinto and the rest of the Planning Commission discussed it at length. It's recorded in the minutes, which are part of your board packet, the board packet that I was not provided with. And neither was Mr. Iaquinto provided with. They committed themselves to that vote, and they voted to return the product that they had originally produced after months of study to this board for final decision. That was their recommendation. They again looked at this 2 weeks later on May 15th. Now this is a vote that's after the alleged conflict of interest, the alleged contract. And what happened there? Mr. Iaquinto voted the exact same way. Where's the corruption? Where's the conflict? The conflict would be if he got a bunch of money and then changed his vote. He voted the same way. There's no conflict, there's no change, there's no corruption here, there's no misconduct in office or malfeasance. It's a man consistently serving the township and continuously publicly advocating for the exact same position. What was that position? To make a recommendation to this board. And what did this board do? This board, months later, after continued study, approved a zoning ordinance. And in the board pack that I wasn't provided with, that I had to download myself from the internet, there aren't copies of that ordinance here. If you're going to remove this man, you should look at what the exact words are that he's alleged to have conflicted himself out over. You don't have enough information today to remove him. That would be ridiculous. As we sit here today, from my understanding, the marijuana licenses are just being opened now. They've just applied, and there's a licensing process, and there's a random process for opening those and reading those. And those licenses will be awarded pursuant to the ordinances that you yourselves have drafted. Mr. Iaquinto didn't ensure marijuana would be allowed on his property. That didn't happen. That's just not factually accurate at all. The substance of what he did is important because that is the substance of it. In these situations, the conflict would be created by a binding decision that could not be reversed. That would be the misconduct in office. That would warrant removal. Here we just have a recommendation. The memo that the supervisor issued today, dated today, that was available to the board but not provided to me, that refers to events that occurred at the May 28th, 2019 board meeting. Mr. Iaquinto didn't vote there. He didn't create any conflict of interest there. Refers to Mr. Iaquinto addressing this board at the July 23rd, 2019 during the public comment. That's not a conflict of interest. Everyone has the right to address this board, whether they own property or not. Later in November, this board adopted a marijuana ordinance. Mr. Iaquinto didn't have anything to do with that. That's your vote. December 10th board meeting, this board adopted a marijuana permit application that established the window, proving in writing that Mr. Iaquinto is not responsible for these charges, that he didn't ensure marijuana would be available at his property. January 24th, a month ago, applications submitted, a deadline for applications. At this point, he discloses things because now it's something real. Now, if that property comes up before the Planning Commission, there's a real conflict. And you know what he did? He said, I'm not going to vote on any of it. That's a step, and that, let me just tell you, that is something that the township supervisor complains about. She says, and I'll quote, offering to recuse himself only, in italics, only when his property is before the commission is inadequate and does not recognize his breach of the public trust. Read the bylaws. That's more than what's required. The bylaws do not require him to recuse himself at all. It says they may abstain himself, may absent himself from the room. He can continue to vote on this stuff. He is the honest guy who did disclose it and who is recusing himself. This is the guy that's accused of misconduct in office. Really? That's not adequate. That's more than what the bylaws require. If you don't like the law, you're the body that writes the laws. Change the law. Don't remove him. Maybe you do need to revisit your bylaws. Maybe you need to revisit your ordinances. I'm not here to say that. That's your decision. That's what you're elected for. Obviously, it's not a good situation the way it is. Mr. Iaquinto touched on some irregularities here, and I've touched on them as well. We weren't provided with this memo. This is my off-the-fly, off-the-cuff reaction to it. The township supervisor didn't disclose that she's the one that's bringing the charges. She didn't consult the board, certainly not in an open meeting. She didn't consult the board. You folks didn't vote on that. She decided that she would bring these charges. So now she's going to act as the prosecutor and she's going to vote on the removal. She's going to be the prosecutor and the judge. A cynic might say that's a conflict of interest. A cynic might ask the board to disqualify her from voting on this. But Mr. Iaquinto is not interested in that. He really just wants his name cleared in this situation. My letter that I wrote and that is included, thank you for including it in the board packet, referred to a long-standing policy whereby it took 2 members of this board to request services of the township attorney. That's a long-standing policy. It's within your power, certainly, to revisit that. Maybe you decide to do that, maybe you don't. That'll be up to you. I think it would have been well-founded if that policy was followed in this case. This investigation is certainly not proper. You don't even have the ordinances in front of you that supposedly created a conflict. How can you remove the guy when you don't even know what the ordinances look like? So what would a proper investigation look like? The township would investigate facts. They would gather statements from the witnesses. Did anybody talk to the members of the Planning Commission? You would review the ordinances and proposed amendments to the ordinances. You would scrutinize the votes, which I guess you can do because you've got the minutes in front of you. You would look at this township's board's activities and see if they were influenced in any way. You would have accurate charges, well grounded in the facts. Again, it's simply not the case that he ensured through his vote which didn't change the outcome because it was not the deciding vote in the Planning Commission. It's not accurate. The charge is not accurate that he ensured that marijuana would be available on his property or would be allowed on his property. You would not have statements that offering to recuse himself only when the property is before the commission is inadequate. That's more than what's required under the bylaws and the ordinances. We would have a real opportunity to rebut the evidence. We would be able to confront the witnesses against us, and we'd be able to present evidence, not scrambling at the last minute to address these kind of charges. He was mailed charges. He wasn't emailed these charges. They could have traveled to his home at the speed of light. Instead, it took several days. Then when they got there, he needed to go to the post office to sign for them. Insult to injury. Mr. Iaquinto could have requested a closed session of this matter today to discuss his performance on the Planning Commission. He did not want to. He did not feel this is something that should be hidden from view. The public should know that Mr. Iaquinto never changed his vote, went above and beyond the ordinances, and is recusing himself, has publicly stated that he's going to recuse himself from all future votes, even though he's not required to do so. And he wanted to address his service here, which he's done today. The penalty that is proposed, which is removal from his office, is not even remotely appropriate on these facts. Any harm, and again, it's difficult to see how there was any conflict of interest created here. Any harm has already been cured because he's going to be recusing himself from now on. The township supervisor refers to allowing Mr. Iaquinto to continue to serve on the Planning Commission, sullying the commission. Every township and every city should be so sullied. There today was a discussion of selling publicly owned land without an appraisal to an applicant for a marijuana license. You don't think that will expose, for what I understand was less than the highest bid. You don't think that will expose the township to potential litigation? You don't think that's so much worse than what Mr. Iaquinto did or is accused of doing? But the fact of the matter here is, what he's accused of is ensuring voting, using his position of trust to ensure marijuana would be available at that property. And that's just not the case. Maybe it will be at the end of the licensing process, maybe it won't. We just don't know. And because of that, you can't in good conscience remove this man. He should be allowed to continue to serve the public until the end of his term. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion
Well,
because we're on number 1. Not to remove Sam Iaquinto from the Northfield Township Planning Commission due to alleged malfeasance.
we have a motion by Ms. Otto with support by Ms. Chick. Now we have a discussion. I don't think we have heard everything that needs to be heard about this item. And the allegations that came back this way, I don't believe are true. We received the letter from Mr. Iaquinto January 24th. And that was the first time any of us knew that his property was sold or had a purchase option with a marijuana company. So I do have some questions for Mr. Iaquinto before I would vote on any of these items, this motion. Would that be appropriate, Mr. Fink? Since we are in the midst of a motion.
The statute says that to remove someone, you must first have a public hearing.
Right.
The board adopted an agenda. I don't think it was necessary for the board to vote to open the public hearing. I think the board had adopted an agenda. The chair of the meeting could have opened the public hearing, but then the board voted essentially to amend the agenda, and then voted to amend the agenda again by having Mr. Iaquinto and his attorney speak, which the board can do, but it makes for a little bit of disorder. I think that the board could vote on Trustee Otto's motion. What the board could not do right now is vote to remove Mr. Iaquinto until you have a public hearing.
So can we vote to keep him without having a public hearing with some reasonable, I mean, can I ask Mr. Iaquinto some pointed questions?
You have a motion on the
I have a
floor. The
motion.
board can have discussion. If it's part of your
Okay.
usual
It's
process
part-
to involve members of the community, then yes.
Okay. I think it's important to our vote to actually know from Mr. Iaquinto what happened.
Is this a trial?
Ms. Otto, you have something?
Yeah, I do have some comments to make.
Okay. Since you made the motion, go ahead.
Okay. There's a couple of things that a supervisor can and cannot do. One, you asked Sam to resign on February 3rd. The supervisor has no authority to ask for the planning commission, any member on the planning commission board to resign. Only the board, the township board has that authority because the township board is the one that appointed him. The other point is calling the public hearing. The supervisor has all right to call a public hearing. But the public hearing was alleging malfeasance, and she was the one that was bringing it forth, not the board. Shared documents was, the comment was that on February 13th, the notice to the board that a public hearing was supposed to be made, that there was documents shared with the board at that time. There wasn't. It was just a memo to the board stating that there was going to be a public hearing. The information that is in our packet, we received it the same time that it was posted on the website. We were not told about the request for resignation on February 3rd, not until we got the memo on the 13th. One key aspect of this is this. The marijuana ordinances were brought to the township board on April 23rd. From April 23rd to November of when the township board approved those ordinances, the planning commission no longer had any touch, any draft, any part of changing those ordinances. It solely stayed with the township board. On the April 23rd meeting, there was no motion for those changes to go back to the planning commission to review. There was only a comment made by Supervisor Chalkley that it goes back to the planning commission to consider. That's all that was done. There was no motion on it. So from what I understand, as of the 23rd, until we voted, until November, it all stayed with the township board. It never went back to the planning commission.
Okay. Are you finished, Ms. Otto?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Iaquinto, I have some questions. Could you please come up to the podium? Mr. Iaquinto.
If you don't have enough information to remove Mr. Iaquinto, your vote should be no. You should have conducted an investigation.
I have some questions for Mr. Iaquinto.
He declines to answer.
That's unfortunate. Okay, then I will have to state, I'll have to state what I know then. Okay. I have the floor. So there is a state law that says that someone with a conflict of interest needs to disclose it. It is shall, it is not maybe. It is not if it's a good idea. It's shall disclose a conflict of interest. And the bylaws of the Planning Commission, which we developed, I actually voted no on them, but which we developed, state the reasons for a conflict of interest. So we have all of these months, the Planning Commission goes about their business, they produce an ordinance that they provide to the board on March 20th. The board takes a look at it, refers it to the attorney, requests to have the Planning Commission actually come and hear some presentations on the 23rd of April, and only Mr. Kuzno came. The rest of them didn't think that it was important enough to come, so we only had one. On May 1st, at the 23rd of April meeting, the board made about, let's see, what do you have, 10 or 12? 10, I think, recommendations to go back to the Planning Commission. One of them would have eliminated, it was a motion. It was a motion, yeah. It was a motion.
There were motions on each one.
Yep.
To change it.
To change it, yep. So the board wanted to change the ordinance so that there were no retail or provisioning centers in the Whitmore Lake districts, all of the Whitmore Lake districts. And that was sent back to the Planning Commission. So on May 1st, the Planning Commission had that. And then Mr. Iaquinto made a motion for the Planning Commission not to consider what the board had said and return the original ordinance back to the board. So my question to Mr. Iaquinto, which he probably isn't going to answer, is when did it occur to you that you might be interested in selling your marina to a marijuana establishment? What month?
Having an idea to sell a marina is not a conflict of interest. The conflict of interest is defined in the bylaws. So
Okay.
we're just on a fishing expedition.
He has a pecuniary interest for
he
his
does not
property.
if there's an idea. He does not have a pecuniary interest in an
Okay.
idea. That's not
On
actually-
May 10th, an agreement just poof, and there it was, and Mr. Iaquinto signed it on May 10th. So probably it was negotiated for a while prior to May 10th, but Mr. Iaquinto
See,
doesn't
but
want to know.
that's the key, that's an assumption you're
Right,
making.
right.
And you don't have any evidence.
Okay,
You're
but
putting something as an intent.
I do have evidence that it was signed on May 10th, which is the reason of the whole reason of the public hearing. And then May 15th, the Planning Commission dealt with our recommendations again, and Mr. Lippens told the Planning Commission that the original maker of the motion to send the original ordinance back to the board needed to be the person to rescind the motion so that they could
And
send
they
it back to the
decided
board.
not to, and they
Mr.
declined.
Iaquinto refused to rescind
No, the
motion.
board refused to
The-
rescind the motion.
You should read.
I did. I have it right here.
Okay.
So
It's
the
there.
motion was never made to go to, it says on our minutes In answer to the question from Lippens, Chockley confirmed that each of the motions passed by the board is a direction for the Planning Commission to consider in revising the draft ordinance. We never requested the Planning Commission to revise the plan, to revise the ordinance. We already revised them by making those motions.
Okay, I have the floor. So Mr. Iaquinto on May 15th said he will not agree to rescind the motion he made to send the proposal back to the board. He said the commission prepared an ordinance based on many hours of work and research, and he refused to rescind the motion. So the Planning Commission did not take any further action on that, and we had the original one. He also drafted a letter on May 1st and May 15th to send back to the board stating that they wanted the original ordinance. So we had many opportunities for Mr. Iaquinto to disclose a conflict of interest, and it didn't happen. So then, on July 23rd, we had a public hearing at the Board of Trustees about the permitting process. And Mr. Iaquinto got up and shared with the board how he felt it was important that we have marijuana establishments downtown. And immediately after that, Mr. Maynard, who is actually here tonight, came and spoke to the board and talked about a really nice restaurant that could be on the water. And it just happens to be Mr. Iaquinto's marina. So we have Mr. Iaquinto and we have Mr. Maynard, who already have a contract with each other at that public hearing, but there was no disclosure that it was the marina. So that, to me, it's a matter of integrity. There were multiple opportunities to share that, and if you had just shared that back then, it would have been the Planning Commission could have taken whatever action they thought was appropriate. We would not be here today. So, the questions were, was there a conflict of interest? Yes, there was a conflict of interest. And did you disclose the conflict in a timely manner? And that is no. And the other thing is that malfeasance? It's yes.
You are making that decision for the board. The board has not made that decision.
We can vote on if there was a potential conflict of interest, but it doesn't matter at this point.
That's not the motion that's on the table. The motion that's on the table is not to remove Sam Iaquinto from the Township Planning Commission due to malfeasance.
Okay.
That's
the motion.
And
but
so I called order right now. If there's no other discussion.
I'm not finished.
I called a question.
I'm not finished.
Call the question.
I'm not done. You interrupted me. Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna ask.
And what I have to say
I'm gonna
is.
ask for a bathroom break.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Dockett. Okay. Well, you can hear as you're walking out. Okay. Okay. 5-minute break. Okay. 5-minute break.
I think we need to apologize to him and let him know that he needs to come back. Oh, I haven't.
Each one change the ordinance right there. You guys are the deciding body. Period. Nothing else matters. That changes the ordinance.
Can I get everyone to take their seats? One, two, three, four. Thank you. A big one. Thank you. Okay, let's get back to sitting down. Good evening. I think we've lost the mics.
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Oh, there we go. Okay, now you can. Okay, good. All right, everyone, let's get back to business here. Okay, where's,
We need to make a comment.
you want to make a comment?
Yeah. It's just
Okay.
housekeeping comment.
Yeah, okay.
So Chief Wagner wanted to remind everybody that you could go, anybody that is parked in the back of the building can go down the staircase over on this side. They don't have to go all the way around the building.
Okay, that sounds good.
But you can't get back in
Okay.
if you go out there.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Okay. So, there are consequences to decisions, and Mr. Iaquinto made a decision to hide the fact that he had a purchase agreement on his marina with a marijuana establishment until the last possible moment. And that's too bad. But there's also even no expression of remorse, or like, I did wrong, or I won't do this again, or whatever. There's just nothing. So this board doesn't seem to care, doesn't seem to want to take a stand on what's honest and what is honesty and integrity. So what about transparency? This board talks about it a lot. And I'm not seeing it. So we can move on.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't think you want to open that Pandora box about transparency here.
I have made every attempt to put the information in for this board so that the board can make decisions. I didn't go around behind the scenes and try to make this secret.
Well, let us make
So
our
now
decision.
we have a
let's call
public
the
hearing.
question. Call the question.
So we will call the question. And it was a motion by, yeah, what is the motion?
What is the motion?
Motion by Ms.
Can you help
Otto.
us?
A
It's been a long
motion was
time.
made to not remove Sam Iaquinto from the township, from the Northfield Township Planning Commission due to alleged malfeasance.
And I supported.
Okay, motion by Otto, support by Chick. Do we have any more discussion on this? Oh, but that, you're calling the question. Okay.
I'm saving mine to the end of the board meeting, but
Okay,
I didn't
that's
get any
fine.
comment time.
Okay.
Come
All
on
right,
now.
roll call vote, please.
I have a question. Are we sure that we want to use the alleged in there? I mean, is that the proper? Is that,
I'm just repeating.
I mean, do we want to say he didn't, you know, or do we want to use the word alleged?
Just keep them as.
That's my question. I want to
The
be
motion
clear.
has
I
been
want
made,
to be
Mr.
clear.
Dockett, and seconded, so you have a motion before you. And I think the question's been called, so I think the board should vote on the motion.
Yeah.
Is
So
there-
it's a motion to call the question.
So
So,
I think, Mr., if I may speak for you a little bit, Mr. Dockett, I think our question for you, Mr. Fink, is do you have any concerns with the language of the motion
Right.
based on the topic?
I think the motion clearly expresses the intent of Trustee Otto, and if the board adopts it, it clearly expresses the intent of the board.
Thank you.
okay,
You said alleged malfeasance?
okay. I guess we can have a roll call vote then. So this is not for calling the question, this is the question. Motion.
This is the motion.
Motion, okay.
What was that motion again?
Okay, Mr. Dockett.
Well, we're buds, you know. We got to be clear on this one, right?
Not to remove,
Oh, don't do that. Okay, go ahead.
the motion is made is not
Not
to
to
remove Sam Iaquinto from the township, the Northfield Township Planning Commission due to alleged malfeasance.
Do not
So yes
remove
is not to remove, no is to
it.
remove.
We always don't like those double negative
know.
type things.
Yeah,
Double negative.
Thank you.
okay.
Got that, Mr. Dockett? Are we good?
I'm set.
Okay.
Otto?
You're calling me first?
Yep.
So double negative is yes.
Yes.
Your motion. Dockett?
Yes.
Chockley?
No.
Chick?
Yes.
Manley? No. Yes.
No, yes.
Yes. I have to think it.
Was that a yes?
So yes, I want to vote to not remove him.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Zelenak?
Yes.
Okay, that passed.
And I will save my questions for the end.
5-1. Okay, thank you. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the January 11th, 2020 Board of Trustees meeting minutes.
I'll support.
Do we have?
We're on the minutes.
We may have some,
Got any questions?
Changes,
On the
yeah.
minutes.
I have one correction.
Got it.